The images that you are seeing right now are shot on an 11-year-old phone. And I've been wanting to get this phone for a while now, but it's really hard to find one these days. But I finally found one. This is the Nokia 808 Pureview, a smartphone released all the way back in 2012. But how good is it in 2023? This is not just an ordinary phone. It's the first phone with a 41 megapixel sensor. It's not only a high megapixel count, but it also has a really large sensor compared to other phones from the past. But we'll get later more in depth about the camera. This phone was announced at February 2012 at Mobile World Congress. It weighs 169 grams, it has half a gigabyte of RAM and 16 gigabytes of storage. It only has a single SIM slot, but it has the ability to upgrade the storage with a micro SD card slot. It has a 4-inch 360 by 640 display, so it isn't a lot of pixels, but it does have Corning Gorilla Glass, and if you look closely you can definitely see the pixels on the screen. It doesn't run on Android, but a Nokia Belle, which is their own operating system back in the days. They don't use it anymore and it's discontinued, but this was the last phone that ran that OS. After this OS they went to Windows Phone, and after that they went to Android, but this one still has the old operating system on it. The build feels really good actually. It is made from plastic, but it feels like a really nice plastic, and I wish more phones these days were made from plastic instead of glass because it feels more durable, and you can also get replaceable back covers. And of course you can remove the battery, which is really nice. For ports and buttons, on the top it has a headphone jack and a micro USB port for charging, and also under this flap you can see that it has a micro HDMI port, and that's something that you don't really see in phones anymore. What this means is that you can actually connect this phone to a larger monitor and use your phone on a big screen, and that's something that I really like, but on the other hand it's something that most people don't use, so I understand why modern phones don't have this feature anymore. On the right side you can see it's completely clean, and also on the bottom it has a microphone here, and on the right side you have the volume up, volume down, a lock switch to put the phone in sleep mode, and a camera shutter button with 2 stage, so half press to focus and fully press to take a picture. And luckily these days there are still phones that have a shutter button, for example the Sony Xperia, and that's also a feature that I really enjoy using. And on the front it has a touchscreen, but it's also funny that it still has 3 buttons. On the right side it is the power on off button, in the middle is the home button, and on the left side it is the call button, so if you press it you can immediately type in a phone number and call someone. It also has an always on display, which is really cool. I really like the design of this phone with the large camera bump on the back. And on the back you can see here the Nokia 808 text, the Nokia logo, and of course the large camera bump with the text Carl Zeiss 41 megapixel sensor, the camera lens itself, and a xenon flash. And I really like this design, and you can even see that modern phones these days still have some things like the design. For example, the Pixel 7 Pro also has a camera bump that kind of looks like this, and the Nokia One 2017 also had kind of this round form factor. But most phones these days are a lot larger, so this is a really compact phone. And it's really impressive that they have such a large sensor in a small phone. Of course, yes, it is thick and it is heavy, and you definitely notice it feels like a brick almost. The battery life is pretty decent on my model, but for a phone that is this old, it is actually pretty decent. But of course, I haven't tested it a lot because I have never put my main SIM in it and used it as an actual phone. The screen is decent and it can go really bright. For the time it was really good, but you can definitely count the pixels on it, and these days it isn't that good, and also a bit unresponsive. And it feels like I have to tap a bit harder compared to other phones. But the brightness is still decent. For unlocking methods you can set a PIN code, and that's all, so no fingerprint sensor of course. This was at the time where most phones didn't have a fingerprint sensor yet. Now let's talk about one of the main features of this phone. It is of course the camera. It was really impressive for the time, and it was definitely a few years ahead of the competition. The photo quality still looks great today, and you can even zoom in pretty far and still get some really nice results. And it has 2 modes, the Pureview mode or the full resolution mode. In the full resolution mode, of course, it captures the full resolution of the image, but it doesn't use the full sensor, so I think it is around 38 megapixels. But there's also the Pureview mode, which allows you to take pictures in 8, 5 or 3 megapixels, and it will combine multiple pixels into one, which will give you a really nice image. So even 5 megapixel images look amazing on this phone. However, camera technology has moved on, and these days there are definitely some phones with better cameras, but it also depends on how you look at it, because these days phones actually use a lot of processing and a lot of sharpening extra, so if you zoom in the photo doesn't look natural, whereas with this thing it does actually look pretty natural. But this thing definitely lacks the dynamic range. You can see that some things are really overexposed, others are really underexposed, and it doesn't have an HDR mode. The video quality of this phone wasn't the best, but it is actually decent. What you are seeing right now is recorded on the Nokia 808, and because of its large sensor with high megapixels, you can actually zoom in without that much of quality loss. So in 1080p you can zoom in 4 times, and in 360p you can actually go up to 12 times, but 360p just doesn't look good at all, of course. But the 4 times 1080p zoom actually looks nice. The low light is the weak point of this phone. It does have a large sensor, so you think maybe it's good in low light, but it's not. And that's because camera processing has really moved on, and it's definitely better than what it was before. Images will get blurry and there will be a lot of noise, so low light is definitely one of the weak points of this phone. But when it is really bright, it looks really nice. Also, one feature that I really like about the 808 is that it has a built-in ND filter, and it's amazing. I wish more phones had it. But what is disappointing is that it's only available in the photo mode, so no way to turn the ND filter on in video. But it's still a really cool feature, and it's nice that it is here. It would be amazing if newer phones had this. I have mixed thoughts on the manual mode of this camera. There is no way to adjust the shutter speed, and you can only adjust the ISO as a manual feature, and the focus by holding on the screen and then selecting a focus mode, or by tapping to focus. So there is not really manual control for shutter speed. However, it does have manual control over sharpness, contrast and saturation, and I think that's amazing, because some phones are too contrasty, too sharp these days, and then the image looks really overprocessed, but with this one you can turn it down. Right now I'm recording at 0 saturation, 0 sharpness and -3 contrast, so you can see that the contrast is a bit lower, and that's something that I prefer to use. The last thing we're gonna talk about is the software. The stability is actually really nice. It doesn't really crash and it works fine, and the speed is also great, and it's actually working fast for a phone that only has half a gigabyte of RAM. However, there are a lot of things that are shut down, so the store doesn't work anymore, Facebook doesn't work, Twitter doesn't work, and the internet browser is so old that most websites don't support it anymore. The only website that I was able to get it to run was Bing, so I could look up websites, but if I click the link it doesn't work. And I could go to images and look at some images. Of course, the software support has stopped on this phone, which is pretty obvious because it's so old, but there isn't really anything you can do with it. It is really limiting. There is still a dictionary on there which works, but it's only in English. So, should you buy one in 2023? Of course no, unless you want it as a collector's item. It is still a really interesting phone to have, and the camera is really unique. And it took all the way until 2018 to get beaten with the 41 megapixel sensor. Before that, all the phones were below 41 megapixels.